I would like to call to order the Gladstone Planning Commission meeting on Tuesday, April 21st at 6:35 PM. Tammy, roll call, please.
Commissioner Volbada,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss,
Here.
Commissioner Busick,
Here.
Commissioner Carlson, Commissioner Graw,
Here.
Commissioner Brennan,
Here.
Chair Smith.
Present. Let's do the flag salute, please. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Consent agenda. All items listed below are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a commission member or person in the audience requests specific items be removed from the consent agenda for discussion prior to the time the commission votes on the motion to adopt the consent agenda. This evening, item number 1, we have approval of February 17th, 2026 regular meeting minutes. And in our regular agenda, item number 2, monthly planning reports for February and March. Item number 3, work session discussion of text amendments to Gladstone Municipal Code for compliance with recent state legislation. And then business from the public. And then business for the Planning Commission. So let's go back to item number 1. And do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from February 17th.
Second. Commissioner Volbada and Commissioner Graw have made the motions to accept the meeting minutes. Could we have a roll call count, please?
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Graw,
Yes.
Commissioner Busick,
I didn't attend that meeting, so I'm not going to vote.
Can you?
Absent, okay.
Gotta speak into it.
Commissioner Weiss,
Yes.
Commissioner Volbada,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes, meeting minutes have been approved. Next item. Item number 2 is our monthly planning report. And before we get started on that, I would like to make comment of how much I believe, well, not only myself, but other planning commissioners really appreciate the pictures of the item that you've got listed. It's exceptional and it's extremely helpful. So thank you very much. Staff, would you please give us your report?
Yes, thank you, Chair Smith. So the reports for the 2 months since we've met include building permits and submittals that we've reviewed at the staff level. You'll see on both reports that we have an administrative application for a 3-parcel partition that will ultimately be a middle housing land division. It's incomplete pending some access issues that we're working out with the applicant. So no progress has been made on that. On the February report, there were, I believe we're getting to the end of the manufactured home replacements at 2 Rivers that were part of a grant that saw the replacement of multiple homes in that area. So 2 of those are on that report, and then a handful of residential conversions to either residential treatment or adult foster care, which is one of the topics we'll talk about tonight. Any questions about February or March?
No, just great job. Thank you. Okay. Commissioners, any questions at all? No? Okay.
Just one question. Sorry, I wasn't on the commission when the decision was made to approve this. Can you give me just a quick, just 30-second overview of what it is and how it got to where it is?
On the monthly planning report?
The 3-lot partition on Caldwell Road.
Oh, yes. It's not a planning commission decision, so it's a staff level partition decision. And the proposal right now is to divide the one lot into 3 for a standard partition, and then to come back and divide each of the parcels into 4 for what they call middle housing land division. And that is permitted by state law for you to be able to do that. We currently have the proposal has 4 future lots on parcel 3 taking access to Cornell Place. But we haven't seen that easement that grants access to that, or the applicant does not include that property owner with the application. So information that more traffic would be coming through that property seems important for that person to also be involved. So we have it. When an application comes in, whether it's something coming to planning commission or something that we're reviewing as staff, we have to deem the application complete by going through a checklist and making sure they've submitted all the materials required for review. This application has been deemed incomplete because they haven't submitted full access standard responses yet.
Can you explain that's a mental health,
Middle housing.
middle housing?
Yeah,
Explain
so.
what middle housing is, please.
Yes, so middle housing is it's duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, townhouses, and cottage clusters. It's meant to fill the middle housing gap that's between a single unit home and a multifamily like apartment or condominium structure. It's meant to make more price points of housing, both rental and owner occupied. So the state has changed the rules about how they can be built and on what properties they can be built on, and allowing these lots to divide into those much smaller lots so that each home is sitting on its own lot allows you to then sell those properties rather than rent them if they're all sitting on the same parent parcel.
So are they proposed to be homes?
They'll be detached dwellings.
Yes.
Small detached homes.
Okay.
They could, though, propose attached product. Townhouses would also be permitted. But the current proposal is to have individual cottage size homes on individual lots.
Thank you.
And what's the address of this plot of land?
It doesn't have an address. It's on Caldwell Road, almost exactly across from Timms View Avenue. So Timms View. So
Timms
right off
View.
of Glen Echo, it's just in from Glen Echo
Okay.
on Caldwell. There is a new triplex that I believe is under construction that's on the property, not immediately adjacent to the driveway, but just one lot to the north of this. So it's right in that area.
Is this the lot that the Johnson family wanted
Yes.
subdivide? Okay, perfect. Now I just didn't know exactly. I was trying to picture where it was. So
Yes,
their
it's no
property.
longer in the Johnson family. It's changed ownership, but
Okay,
yes.
they sold it.
Mhm.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Can I ask about 6460 Glen Echo? Looks like they want to convert modulars into dwelling units. What's the plan there?
Yes, so that is behind the Hillside Church. It's now owned by Adult and Teen Challenge. So they are looking to provide 4 housing units, transitional housing for women and children in the space behind. So they're going through the approvals right now. Right now, their building permit hasn't been approved because there's SDCs are needed. Those are not currently, I believe, plumbed buildings. So they're adding some utilities. And then our code requires when you're adding residential units, then you assess whether curb and sidewalk is needed. And it is at this location. Some of you may have also been on the planning commission when this site was approved for childcare. So that application is still active and that also requires the curb and sidewalk. So I heard today that the applicant's planning to install those curb and sidewalk and get those SDCs paid. The other piece is that if you can see the residential portion from the street, there were these facade improvements that are required. So they're going to use landscaping to kind of screen these from Glen Echo. So you would see the church and then landscaping behind, but they will complete those street upgrades as well.
So it's no longer a church.
It's no longer a church, although I think it might be used for a similar purpose by Adult and Teen Challenge. I think that the front building, and they've also talked about keeping the childcare use and getting that going as well. So I don't think we're 100% clear on what the full use will be, but we know about the 4 residential in the rear.
And that's already R 7.2.
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
I live within 100 feet of this.
Mhm.
So I have lots of questions.
Okay.
Those were open classrooms before
Mhm.
for kids.
Yes.
Are there, I see it 2 ways here. One is that it will be 2 residences, and I also see it as 4.
Yes. Each building will have 2. So 2 buildings
are
with
they-
2 residences each.
Are they single family owned?
No, they're considered a quadplex on this property, so they'll be owned by Adult and Teen Challenge and occupied by their clients.
I'm kind of negative on it. Because it always was a church. I was hoping that it would stay a church.
Sure, sure.
And I've been in my location for 53 years, so I've seen it as a number of different churches and then going to this.
Yeah.
But it sounds like you still don't know what adult and teen are going to do with it.
That's right. We don't know the clear plan for the front building. We just know because they've submitted building permits that the rear portion is going to be housing.
They've taken all the pews out of that church,
Mm-hmm,
so it's just one big open space.
mm-hmm.
I'm negative on the fact that people are going to start living there
Oh, in
and
the,
call it a residence.
they can't do that in the church building itself because that type of group living wouldn't be permitted in that zone. So that would be something where it wouldn't meet the city's code. But up to 4 individual dwelling units are permitted on that R 7.2 site. They could divide the property and add a lot more housing to it. There's ways they could do that, but that as the church is constructed right now, they are not able to just come straight in and create housing out of it. That said, we're going to talk tonight about how residential uses can be treatment centers and residential homes and things like that. So
And whether,
with more permitting, that sort of thing could
Yes.
potentially happen, and that's state law.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll hold my opinion for a bit.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners?
Are we going to hear about, oh, that was just the code updates. Never mind. I was gonna ask about the city council meeting, but
I wasn't at the city council meeting, but some people in the room were. So if you have questions about that, we might be able to answer. Okay.
Okay, let's go on to the next agenda item. Item number 3, work session discussion of text amendments to Gladstone Municipal Code for compliance with recent state legislation. Staff?
Yes, thank you. We've got a slideshow. It is longer than my typical slideshow, so bear with me. Lots of words.
That's
I
fine.
don't typically do that to you, but there seemed an unavoidable need to do that tonight. So we'll get through it. It's mostly the residential standards that are based on recent legislation at the state level, but then we've had a couple of issues added on to that. So I tried to be clear with the presentation where things are required, where they're optional, where you have some decision-making capability. So let's just get into it. So we are going to talk about proposed development code updates. This is a work session in preparation for this going to public hearings. We have provided DLCD notice so that we can move forward with this project at your next meeting. So over the last really 6 years, but we've done some code updates to come into compliance with a lot of that. So we'll really just focus on the last 2.5 years with our code updates regarding housing. The state legislature has been aggressively targeting housing shortages throughout the state. So looking to make sure that cities and counties are taking their fair share of trying to reduce barriers to housing protection. The state's looking to use these legislative amendments to boost housing supply, streamline the approval process. They do provide funding and oversight, which we'll talk about, as well as increase tenant protections to make sure that people who do get into housing have those protections in place. So we'll start with, and they were in chronological order and then they were in topic order. And now, so I'm hoping that this makes a certain amount of sense, but this is the one we were just talking about. So that hopefully helps. In 2025, House Bill 2005 said that residential treatment facilities and residential treatment homes, so these include adult foster cares, as well as, situations where there's medical or emotional care being provided to residents, that they can be permitted on all lands that are zoned residential, commercial, or employment. So those are our C zones, or our office zone for the employment, as well as anything industrial within 250 feet of a residential zone. So there's not a lot of that in Gladstone. Our industrial is pretty separate, except for the property we're sitting on right here. So there's a little bit of that to address as well. So we need to update our code to allow residential homes, and we'll link that to the ORS definition of that because it's pretty specific of what that includes. And then the other piece of that we spoke about briefly at the beginning of the meeting is exempting these types of uses from a home occupation permit. We have found with our city attorney and now our city council that it is exempt from home occupation, but we want to make it really clear so that people have that written clearly. So there's no ambiguity about how these are being processed. The idea is that a group residential home is a type of housing that the state would like to have available to people that is at the same, in existing neighborhoods, that people can live with dignity, have nice places to live, and not have to go through additional administrative burdens to build or occupy this type of housing. So the state has said, we look at it as housing. Now, the county, Clackamas County, is responsible for making sure these types of structures are safe and they meet our health and safety codes. So the county does require what's called a change of use permit if you're taking a standalone single unit home and converting it into this type of use. There are permits that you need to go through, and then the state agency that's licensing these facilities would also do their visits and issue a license for it. So there's still oversight to make sure that the type of home that's being put forth is appropriate for the type of use that it'll be used for. But from a land use perspective, we're required to look at it as a house.
I have a question.
Yes.
I understand the state's need and desire to make changes like this, but have they also thought about the citizens and what process they're going to implement for citizens who may object or have issues with it? I mean, changes are, it's going to happen in our world.
Yeah.
But there also needs to be a policy put in place so that citizens not just necessarily have a say, but can voice their opinion or have input.
Yeah.
People pay a lot of property taxes and they have rights too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the legislation on this one in particular specifically states that the goal to provide this housing supersedes those other goals. So they're not always that clear in their legislation, but in this one they are. So the decision makers at the state legislative level have heard that and have still decided to move forward with it.
So there's no recourse for citizens that have property.
There's always,
that could be devalued by something like
right. You can
this.
always speak to your legislators, you can always bring that forward, but this is in place now and we are required to adhere to that until any changes are made.
There should be a policy for citizens to have a say.
And that'll come up a little bit more later as well. Okay, sorry for all these words. So House Bill 2138. So middle housing, we were just talking about this. This is those duplex, triplex, quadplex, townhouses, and cottage clusters. They became legislative legislatively required in cities like Gladstone, because we're in the metro urban growth area, on any lot or parcel in our city that would allow a single unit home, you also would allow all these middle housing types. And that law stayed in place from 2019 to 2025. And in 2025, the legislature made updates to it. It wasn't always clear exactly how to implement it. There were some questions about it, so they have refined it. So 2138, it adds, you don't have to have a vacant parcel now to build middle housing. You can now have an existing single unit dwelling, ADU or duplex, and then those dwelling units count as one of your units of middle housing. So for example, if you have a single family home and you want to build a quadplex and then divide it, you can leave the single family home, build 3 more units, and then divide each of those parcels individually. And then your single unit home becomes a piece of the quadplex from the administrative side of things. Whereas before, you would have to leave the existing home on a lot that met our single unit home standards, which in some zones is 7,000 square feet and some is 5,000. Now you can be put that home on a much smaller lot per the new standards. Another change that might impact directly like that application on Caldwell, which is 12 units. Now the city will not be able to require a traffic impact analysis, which we already have for that submittal because it's already been submitted, or traffic related exactions. So any kind of improvements to streets and things like that, unless you are building more than 12 homes in the ultimate project. So that is really impactful to the city's ability to address the infrastructure needs that might be caused. But again, the state looked at it and said 12 is the number that we think won't have a major impact. Anything over that, you can still require these. We still will require system development charges. You can still apply your standard system development charges. There's now a density bonus for producing affordable or accessible units. So if you are proposing a duplex or a triplex, you can add 1 additional unit for this. If you're proposing a quadplex or more than 4 townhouses, you can add 2 additional units. And that's per that standard as well. Right now, the application we have in on Caldwell is to get the partition recorded first. So you have 3 distinct lots and then come back through and get your middle housing division. The state law now says the city has to have a concurrent application process. So if that application were to withdraw and resubmit after July 1, which is when this becomes effective, they would be able to submit everything concurrently, and we would just have to review the 12 lots all at one time. That isn't a huge concern, especially because the traffic impact analysis is being taken away. Even on a 3-lot partition like we have in now, we were able to require that traffic impact analysis because we knew it would be middle housing and we thought there would be impact, especially sight distance along Caldwell, making sure it's safe to turn in and out of the driveway with no improvements needed. This will now mean that we're looking at the full development all at once. I don't think it'll be a huge change to the way the city operates now. We like to look forward and we have a requirement that you shadow plat what you're going to be eventually doing with it if you know. So I think that one won't be as impactful.
So in this situation, concurrent just means that you're going to continue with all of it. There's
Yeah, it reduces the
no
amount of
pause.
it reduces the amount of time because once the partition's approved at the staff level, it goes to the county recorder's office and the county surveyor, and that process can take 3 to 6 months. And so if you're waiting for that to happen before you can submit, that can be pretty impactful to your financing and to your ability to build. So I think the state here is saying, you're allowed to do it. Why make you do it in stages? Why not just look at the whole thing and get it all done at once?
Takes away the pause.
It takes away the pause, which makes sense. And yeah, I think it will be fine to do that. And then right now there's notice requirements. There's public notice for the 14-day period within 250 feet and a local appeals process for middle housing land divisions. This is just dividing the land, and that is now disappearing as well. So it's going to be treated as if you're just building a home on a lot, which doesn't have a public notice component. So below the orange line, we'll be updating our definitions related to middle housing, make sure they comply with the state law, updating our zones for middle housing, make sure that our cottage cluster standards are up to date. I think there were a few things that we needed to tweak there. We have a whole section in our code for middle housing land division and expedited land divisions that we'll need to update to match these requirements. And then our chapter 1794, our hearings processes, we need to be specific about how we're reviewing and processing these. Any questions about 2138?
Not to get too cutesy with the code, but is there a path forward for increasing maybe the traffic allocation of SDCs and then offering a path to waiver of those fees on the traffic impact analysis so that
Like you get
people-
it back if you do
exactly
that, possibly. Yeah, I can. We wouldn't probably. The thing is, system development charges aren't codified, so it'd be more policy related than code related. So we can't require. Let me just think through this circle. We can't require a traffic study, but we have a set rate for SDCs for middle housing, and if you voluntarily provide a traffic impact analysis, you could get the problem is the clear and objective becomes not a clear and objective
I
standard.
really like where he went with this. That's Commissioner Weiss, that's something to look into if we could.
I can look into it, see if there's anything we can do with that. It might be that it's not a code thing, but it's a policy thing
Yeah.
that's put into place. I'll add it to the list.
Or even incentivize it to where there would be some sort of deposit back of some sort if you
Mhm.
do it voluntarily so that we know we're all good to go and it's going to be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that would be important. I mean, we're small now, but the more middle housing, affordable housing, the more we build, the more traffic we're going to have. So
Okay. Yep. I've made note of it and I'll look at it with city
thank you,
staff.
Commissioner Weiss. That was,
Can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
You're saying you don't have to, or you're not requiring a traffic impact analysis. But we know that 12 units or less of a project affects traffic.
Right.
Are we ignoring that?
That's a requirement.
To
Um,
ignore it?
Yeah. To
state
assume,
legislator made
to
it.
assume that it won't have a measurable impact. Um,
That's really stupid.
Well, and just going back to Commissioner Weiss's thought that if we can't require any traffic related exactions, that's what you're using the traffic impact analysis to do, is to determine what those impacts are. So if you say, give us an analysis, and maybe there's still value in it because if the city then decides to take on some of those.
But let's say you have a 12 unit addition someplace. And nowadays, in current living, everybody works,
Mhm.
male and female, that's 24 cars. And that doesn't impact a neighborhood? And we're supposed to just look the other way?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And there's no way to fight that.
Not without changing the law. So again, talking to your legislatures about it. I'm just the messenger. I'm not
No,
a proponent.
I know you're the messenger.
I'm just
I'd
trying
wanna
to
understand
make sure
that
you
that's-
comply with state law.
A
I
lot of
understand
these
that
House bills are in the works for multiple months and sometimes multiple years. And like these monthly meetings, they do give opportunities to come and speak as proponents or opponents. So, I mean, I know a lot of us see these after they've been
Mhm.
codified and they are now we have to integrate them into code.
their law.
But there is opportunity to speak on behalf or against ahead of time, like when these are actually happening. And it's
But it's
just
done now.
this one. Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever notified.
There's a lot more
the
coming.
city?
It's
that they're doing?
It's all online.
Yeah, and the city does
Oh, come on.
participate in like League of Oregon Cities and their lobbyists from the counties that are addressing these things and paying attention to them and keeping track and testifying in a lot of cases too. And some cities testify directly too. Gladstone has a very small staff. You know, it would be hard for them to also follow all legislative actions and testify on all of those, but those things are happening from other cities as well, and conglomerations like League of Oregon Cities or lobbyist groups.
Well, luckily, that's what we have you for.
Yeah, well, yes. And we do sometimes give comments from my 3J point of view as well, but you know, we represent a whole range of different city interests. So, but we're always happy to do that too.
But you'll look into Commissioner Weiss's idea.
Yes, I'll definitely look into
I
it.
think that's a good opportunity to potentially have a workaround.
Yeah, I think we're gonna have to, for the well-being of our city and for our citizens, we need to think outside of the box to keep things as orderly
Yeah,
and as
I just
compliant
wanna-
to what the citizens are hoping this community continues to be.
I just want to be careful not to overpromise what that could do, since we couldn't then exact any traffic related improvements.
That's
based
my
on that.
question. If
Yeah.
if we say we'll incentivize you some way to do a an impact study and something comes out of it, we can't require them to mitigate anything.
Right.
But if we had an exemption or some sort of waiver for completing a traffic impact analysis and developing an action plan as a result of it, or something like that, something that also puts the action on.
But if the
Behind
state
the
says you
waiver.
can't do it, we can't turn around and say you did it, now you have to mitigate it.
No, we're
don't
not
think-
telling them they.
Well, they
have
just
to.
wouldn't get the waiver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just incentivizing them doing that because they'll get a discount somewhere.
in the SDC.
But then what happens if they do it and we learn something that we don't agree with? What's the, I'm just,
Then they
trying to
don't get a
see-
waiver and we can keep that SDC portion to take action on the city side.
but how would we take action?
Right, because it would be, I think, the way that I was hearing the initial one was, can we incentivize them to take the traffic analysis, great, now we have the traffic analysis and it doesn't hit what we think we want it to hit. Then do we incentivize further? That's the next question, right?
Well,
'Cause
I'm
we
just-
don't really have,
There's nothing we can enforce.
exactly.
So I don't really understand, like, I get the value of a traffic impact
Mhm.
study, but it's just requiring the developer, whoever else, to expend, you know, however much, they're not cheap. And so if something comes out of it and we're like, well, you know, we would rather you do it this way, and the developer's like, I'm not doing it that way, there's no way, I mean, it's just extra staff time and it's making people jump through hoops. And in the end, I'm not really sure, I don't see what we're getting out of it.
But typically in those, you would find something that, okay, the developer has to make improvements to something. And if they did the impact study and depending on what that SDC increase is, they could say, okay, we did the impact study, we're not going to take action on it. Then whatever we collect as part of the SDC can go towards what the impact study found.
Having served on the planning commission for quite some time, Webster Ridge Apartments didn't think that they would need as much parking for their complex. They ended up having to spend a lot of money to acquire additional property in order to facilitate the needs of their tenants by creating at least at a minimum 2 parking spots per apartment. And in some cases, there were 3 cars. So they had to spend a lot of money to go back and do that because they had people that wouldn't rent apartments because there wasn't ample parking. So there is a good reason and a necessity for assessments. However, right now with the way legislature has set it up, there's no parking requirements at all. But again, supply and demand, if you've got people that say, I'm not going to rent here because I've got 2 cars, they went to great expense to have to buy additional property to create more parking.
They did, and I actually just recently read through that packet for whatever reason. I don't remember why, but
You
it
knew I
was
was gonna talk about it.
maybe it was purely market driven. The apartment complex was holding over 20 units at a time, not renting them out because their residents were so upset about the parking situation. And in the approval process to add I believe it might have even been a zone change. That's why I was, because I think I was looking at.
I
zone
believe it
changes.
was.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they provided documentation of their exit surveys with all of their tenants, and every single one of them said parking was the reason, one of the main reasons they were leaving.
Yep.
So the market drove them to do that. And that is kind of the whole premise of like the climate friendly and equitable communities and like other like reducing parking requirements, is that the market will drive those things. It will probably be painful, but the market will get you there, is part of that, how this is all, it's part of the state's way of looking at things. So just on the, and again, I'm definitely going to look into this and talk with other staff, but the amount of transportation SDC increase that might have to happen that would offset both the traffic impact analysis as well as improvements could be just so astronomically out of sync with what a transportation SDC. It may not be a useful tool it may not be comparable in that way, but
Sure.
I'm going to look into it
Yeah.
and come back.
Thank you.
Keep your thinking cap on though. I mean, the collaboration that was going on here is awesome. That's why we're here.
I have a friend that lives over by Reed College and they're really developing a lot of apartments over there.
Uh-huh.
And the apartment across the street from his fourplex that he lives in is 80 units and absolutely no parking.
Mhm.
And one up the street is, I think it's 200 units. And they have half parking for one car per unit. And they have half parking. And of course, if they want the parking, it's $600 a month additional on your rent.
Right.
Just because Portland is stupid doesn't mean Gladstone has to be that dumb.
Yeah.
They expect in Portland that you're going to be using a bus,
Mhm.
and people are not going to do that all the time.
I agree that we need better public transportation. If
I
we're
was gonna say,
saying
we
people
have
need to be out
public
of their
transportation,
cars,
but it's
we
not
need to
very
have better.
It's not that adequate.
We
and
need to
actually
have
TriMet's
East
cutting
Coast
back.
level public transportation if we're asking people to get out of their
They're
cars.
cutting
for
the
sure.
routes.
But like we just told, it was totally market driven. Yes,
Yeah.
it was. People were leaving because it's like this. They're done.
Just to offer a little perspective, it costs a lot of money to add parking. So it's probably about, it used to be a few years ago, like 20,000 a parking space, which isn't insignificant when you have a large complex. And so I myself also like parking, but I can see that the push for more affordable housing and higher density, when you're trying to keep costs down, it's one way to do it. But you also need alternative transportation so you need to be like on a MAX line or a major bus
Right.
line, be somewhere very walkable for that to really be successful. But that is the thinking behind it. It's very expensive to build parking.
Should we go on to the next topic and we can always circle back on some of these major
Okay.
themes?
Thank you.
So also in 2025, Senate Bill 974 limited land uses. So this one has an asterisk because it's not effective yet. All the other ones we've spoken about are already effective. And so we'd be applying state law directly like we have with approving adult foster homes and things like that. This one has three different major components. The first is that we now are required to use a staff level review, so no planning commission hearing, for zone changes that allow higher density residential, planned unit developments, which we really we haven't seen in the time I've been here. So I think that's a pretty limited type of land use for Gladstone. And then variances to residential standards. So right now, adjustments to standards are staff level, but variances are at the planning commission level. Now, anything that changes a residential standard would be a staff level review, but our standards would still apply. So that's the first piece. And there's more on the next slide about that because this bill, even though it was in 2025, was kind of refined in 2026. But I'll just say too, there's the middle part is that the city may not apply design standards to residential developments with 20 or more units. So this doesn't apply. Multifamily buildings can still have design standards, but not like a subdivision with 20 or more homes. We still can require building height, setbacks, health, environmental, and safety regulations. And this portion of the bill expires on January 22nd of 2033. So in 7 years, basically, or 6.5 years. So I have code updates struck out where we're not being recommended to update our code because of the sunset clause. So this one we would apply state law directly and not update our code. And DLCD, the state agency, is not recommending or requiring us to update our code. So just an FYI there. The third piece, which Gladstone does an amazing job with already, is that engineering reviews have now become like planning reviews. They have a 30-day completeness and 120-day final review deadline. Where this becomes important is, in my opinion, is when you have outside reviews that are needed. Maybe you have floodplain, you need a FEMA permit, or you need any kind of Department of State lands or an Army Corps permit. And in those cases, like I do with Gladstone, I would just recommend that their staff be really clear with their record keeping about when a project is on hold because it's an outside agency reviewing, so that you basically toll that 120-day clock. So you just need to be keeping really good record of that so you don't get into some kind of administrative problem that you haven't met your review deadline, which is completely out of your hands. Again, Gladstone's really fast at reviewing engineering permits. Applicants are not waiting here for those. The only time I see any kind of delay is honestly when like ODOT is involved. So anything along McLaughlin, we do try to build in a little more time into the schedule to get those permits. But they even, we just finalized today, we finalized the Wong's building supply. And when I told ODOT reviewers that we really needed it within a week so that we weren't holding them up, they were very responsive. So for the final, I don't know how it went for the last 1.5 years getting the permits all done, but to get the project finalized. So just so
You're
you all
talking
know,
about final being the occupancy.
they've
of
got
the
their
structure.
occupancy permit. I think as of today, Public Works signed off on that. So the code updates here would be limited just to those administrative staff level reviews. And I think I have that in the wrong place. The exempt residential homes from home occupation standards, that's a carryover. So it's just the changes. But before we talk about that, let's talk about 4037 as well, because it further refines Senate Bill 974 to say, actually scratch that. We want all residential development applications to go through that are subject to clear and objective standards. So no conditional use permits, nothing that requires a ton of variances and adjustments. These are going to be staff level administrative reviews. We're going to limit public notice to 100-foot radius. So right now we're at 250. It's going to be limited just to your neighbors basically that are touching your property. And then appeals may only be submitted by the applicant. So again, this is only residential development applications. And I think it's going to be important to define residential development applications. There's some working groups happening around the state right now, that one that I'm a part of, that's working on like what is the best definition for residential development? Does it include mixed use or just the residential component? So by the time we have our packet to you, we'll have a vetted definition for residential development. So we try to keep that clear. But then we'll be looking to update the code to meet all the rest of those provisions. So I wanted to take those two together and have discussion on that. And again, because it's meant to refine 974, it's also effective July 1 of this year. Which it's missing its asterisk up top, but it has it down on the bottom.
Something just came to me in the sense that this is all about new development.
Yeah,
So
yes, or conversions of existing like
structures.
properties or structures or
Okay.
additions to lots.
That's what I
infill.
wanted to know.
It would impact that as well.
But that's not clearly spelled out here, though.
Yes, so residential development, the working definition includes addition or adjustment of at least one dwelling unit. So we didn't want it to necessarily include like site improvements like, say you have to do like a floodplain, something associated with residential, that floodplain review should come to you if it meets the threshold for that, and it still would, because the floodplain review isn't the development, residential development, the housing is. So we want to make it specific to the housing.
I can just hear people now saying, does this apply to me in my existing structure? You know, my home or whatever?
Well, anybody who's existing right now, even if they don't comply with the new rules, they become pre-existing non-conforming, which is a permitted way to exist.
Okay.
So that question does come up a lot when you're doing
know.
code updates. Yeah, like what about me? I already have this, situation. It's like, yeah, you're,
Okay.
especially if you were you either pre-existed standards that were in place for that, or you got an approval under past standards.
Right.
You have done everything right and you continue to exist in your standards. If you want to then expand further, then your expansion needs to meet the new standards. But you're building, and even, in most cases, if it burns to the ground and you rebuild, you usually get those grandfathered standards as well.
Okay. And this wouldn't, in the past basements, if you want to do any kind of remodeling or whatever, you didn't have to go through a process. Is that now going to be required moving forward?
In a basement?
Mhm.
So we wouldn't necessarily look at anything in a basement unless it is triggered through a building permit.
Okay.
And if it's triggered through a building permit and they're putting in a new unit, we do see that sometimes. And it's less of a concern from a planning standpoint and more of a SDC capture. If they're adding an additional building, dwelling unit and bringing in another household onto the site, we want to make sure we have the right size water meter, the right size sanitary sewer pipe to take everything out, and that we're charging the right amount of utilities.
Right. So in other words, if someone was just finishing an unfinished basement,
They would probably still need a building permit depending on what they're doing, but it wouldn't, if it came to
because in
me
the
and
past they never did.
they do, it depends.
Yeah.
There are thresholds for what requires a building permit.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's structural, if it requires electrical, plumbing, any of those permits, if it trigger, if you're using a contractor and it requires permitting, hopefully they're getting the right kinds of permits and then those are getting circulated.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. Do you think some of that clarification should be in our codes? What we just talked about in the sense of being really clear about existing?
It's there. I would definitely refer people to the pre-existing non-conforming standards.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there and it's
Okay.
clear and it's specific to residential in some portions.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, continue.
Continue, and
Does anyone have any questions or input?
we can always circle back and
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
okay. So now we have a couple slides to talk about that is another like sunsets in January of 2032. So we're not going to update our code, but we want to make sure that everybody's aware of these. And on this this is called Senate Bill 1537. And this bill created the Housing Accountability and Production Office. So that's a state office that oversees and helps stimulate housing development. It's also a bit regulatory in that there have been established goals for each city of how many housing units we should be producing. So Gladstone has like an established goal, and I think ours is like 79 units or something. I should have looked that number up, but it's under 100 for the period that they're tracking, which is 6 years or something. And if we aren't meeting that or showing progress toward that, the way HAPO has said they will work is that the first thing they'll do is sort of look to see what kind of assistance they can provide. Like, are there state resources that can help the city of Gladstone or any city that's, having a hard time meeting their production goals in increasing their amount of housing that they're producing? Is there something happening at the local level? Is it wetlands? Do we need the state to come in and do a wetland study so that we know exactly what's developable? Is that holding up what can happen? Is there some roadway that just, if that last 100 feet was built, ding, then we'd get all the housing that we need? And so does the state want to come in and put funds toward that? Those types of things. They are looking to assist meeting those goals, but also a bit regulatory, and like they're sort of looking over our shoulder to see what we're doing, right? We have to report to them annually how many housing units that we've approved. So that's the first part of Senate Bill 1537 that's interesting to know, but doesn't have any code impacts. The second is that the cities must grant adjustments to standards for housing applications, and these are residential or commercial zones. So think about Portland Avenue, any of our mixed use type areas that we might see develop there. Here, Senate Bill 1537 allows an applicant to walk in and request up to 10 adjustments, and they're mandatory. So we can't be like, well, our code says you can do this. No, these 10 have to be granted as long as you're producing a density over 6 dwelling units per acre. So we'll just go through, I just have 2 slides on what those are. There are more than what's listed on the slides, but I took out anything that Gladstone's already doing. So parking minimums, that's only applicable in certain parts of town where we have parking minimums. Landscaping, you can now get a mandatory adjustment up to 25% of the standard. Well, our current standard is 15%. If you're coming in to do like a mixed use and you want to build out a site, we say, great, you have to landscape 15% of that. When you reduce that 15% by 25%, you're at 11.25%. So I did the math for everybody. Side or rear setbacks up to 10%. This is actually aligns perfectly with our adjustments that we already have. So not such a huge deal there. Same with minimum lot size, width, or depth. We're already at that with our code. Total window area is interesting. In our code, it's 60% for street facing in the downtown core and 50% for street facing outside the downtown core. If you adjust those numbers, the 50 to 60% by 30%, now you can require 35 to 42%. It's still a significant amount of window glazing. The legislative ORS language actually says, but you can't go lower than 12%. So the bare minimum is 12%. We're still going to see 35 to 42 with these mandatory adjustments. The other ones that will be could be affected in Gladstone, we do regulate our facade materials. We've talked about metal and things like that at certain times. Color and pattern is in our, not pattern, but colors in our downtown core overlay. We talk about earth tones. Roof forms and materials, we do have specific standards about that. So those things could be adjusted and each one would be considered one adjustment. So if you say, I want to actually use metal on my front of my building, I want to paint it hot pink, and I want to have a triple horned roof, like those are 3, right? You can do up to 10. So they can do that. I don't think anyone will, because again, the market, right? They have to sell these products or rent these products. But those things are mandatory. So staff can't review and say, no, you can't do that. It has to be allowed. And then the final piece, and this is only applicable to manufactured dwelling parks, middle housing, multifamily housing, and mixed use residential. But now that I'm reading that, we don't have these standards for single unit, so I maybe didn't need to put that. We do have the requirement the building be oriented toward the street, or if it's at a corner, to have an opening within a certain distance of the corner. I think it's 10 feet in the Old Town overlay, so that's one. And building height maximum up to 1 additional story or 20% increase to base zone. So our max height is 35 feet. Or 3 stories. We do already have in our downtown core overlay that you can add that additional story if you have that base level 12 feet minimum. So it's sort of in line with what we already require, just to get rid of that 12-foot requirement. Again, these are applicable until 2032. So the market's really gonna have to pick up for us to see, I think, major impacts from this. Also, as I said, a lot of them overlap with what our standards already are. Any questions? And so no code adjustments with these. Questions, thoughts?
On the HOPO, are they allowed to step in to expedite help expedite production or intervene if we're on track to meet our 79 over 6 years?
I I would say that would be so unlikely. They are also a staff of a few people. So to come into a city that's already on track, I would say no. I would not expect that.
Thank you.
I think it would be a pretty rare instance that they'd even step in a major way if you're not on track. I've been told by HAPO that the production units are aspirational. So they started they sort of applied higher numbers to every city than maybe is actually feasible. And so we're sort of in a testing phase, like how many are really getting produced. And right now the market is not financing housing units very well. So I think everybody is going to be low. So yeah, I don't think
And
so.
we don't have excess land sitting around either.
We don't have excess land. And,
Yeah.
and we were clear with that. So we as city staff were given the opportunity to review the methodology of how they came up with the allocations. And we responded, we are landlocked, we have infill, we have limited opportunities.
Yeah, we do, unless,
yeah.
there's an old building that, somebody purchases and decides they want to level it and rebuild. I mean,
Yeah.
we are landlocked, you're right.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Go ahead.
Being that these do have sunsets, do you see some sort of addendum like in the future? Or
It's
like,
always possible.
Okay.
I think, yeah, I've wondered that myself. Are these really sunsets or are we in a trial period? Are they trying it out and then seeing if they want to make it real, right?
I'm just looking at the next slide with like the design review type things, and I'm just thinking like, there's no way that the City of Portland Design Commission is gonna like take that laying down. So I would be shocked if this came back as an addendum.
Okay.
I'm curious to see what they do with that.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Okay. Okay, we can almost fully step out of residential just briefly, although it's still residential zoning, but there's a few regulations regarding childcare. We did some updates for family childcare home that's now permitted in our residential zones, but now we are going to allow childcare centers outright on all lands zoned for multi-unit residential or industrial. We already allow this in industrial zones in the L1. So we just need to update our MR zone to allow childcare centers. And then now we will allow preschools and pre-kindergartens on lands where places of worship are permitted. We actually don't have places, church permitted anywhere. It's conditional in all of our R zones and most of our C zones. But we will add preschool and pre-kindergarten anywhere we say church. But speaking of church, we did want to talk about the word church, which we have in our code multiple times in multiple zones. It's not a very common term used anymore in development codes because it's not that, it doesn't encompass everything that it could be, and we don't have a definition for it. So we would like to update our code to either say places of worship or religious institution. In looking at other cities, these are used sort of interchangeably, but there's, definitions are widely available for either of these. So the question that we would pose there is, does the commission prefer place of worship or religious institution? The preferences?
Start with Jennifer.
Place of worship.
Jacob?
I would like to see one that is more more agnostic to. I don't think either of those capture what I would like to see. But I can't think of an
I hear what you're
alternative.
saying, like a community-based gathering space, but I think part of the reason that most cities keep this type of use is because the definition is often connected to the tax exempt status.
Yeah.
So that I think is why they link it to a religious organization. It has to do with the federal law about religious properties. So I hear what you're saying because I thought about that too. Like maybe we want to talk about more of a communal gathering space.
How about instead of religious institution, be religious organization?
That's a church.
or a synagogue or a mosque or.
Yeah.
Yes, but
So-
it's still, I mean, Catholics have a church.
Right.
They can call it what they want, but it's a church.
Yeah, so I think what we're saying is the word church is too limiting. What do we want to expand it to?
Why is that it's limiting? Because, for example, the church close to me, which used to be a church and now is supposedly not a church.
Right.
If you called that area over there a religious institution, which wouldn't be very hard to do,
hmm
they could be tax exempt.
But they are tax exempt as a church.
Are they a church?
They have,
I'm talking about the
Hillside
organization.
Church?
That's probably a 501(c), the Teenage Challenge.
yeah, and it might be that because it could be any nonprofit, maybe then a community-based assembly could be,
I could have a prayer group at my house and put it on the outside of my house, church, and be tax exempt.
I think you have to meet more definitions than
Yeah,
that
there's
for the
criteria.
federal.
Well, okay, across the street, they don't hold church services. They don't even have places to sit.
hmm
So why are they tax exempt?
And that one might be because it's owned by a nonprofit now.
I'd like to see that it's
I believe the Teen
nonprofit.
Challenge is
hmm
501.
Somebody wants to do all that work for nothing?
Well, yeah, as a
I'm
community
sorry, what'd you
service.
say, Commissioner Volbada?
Oh, I said that's out of our, it's their prerogative. If they want to do that, then.
Yeah, and that's the mission of their organization, is to provide those kinds of gathering spaces. So I think that's part of their mission, whether it's religious or not. There's organizations that do that type of work that are non-religious.
Okay, and if you want my opinion, it should be church.
Okay.
No change.
I like place of worship.
Place of worship is fine. I don't have a preference really.
Religious institution.
Okay.
I'm actually fine with either one. Which one do you see the most of?
In the codes I reviewed, I was seeing religious institution more, and the definition of that was a structure or campus used by a religious organization having a tax exempt status. The reason I included place of worship is because that is what the new ORS links the preschool and pre-kindergartens to, places of worship. So, but they didn't define it. I looked for the definition in SB 1099 and they didn't define place of worship.
And I
so-
like the fact that the religious institution does have a definition.
Yeah, in many of the codes it does. Yeah, and it has an easy to implement, structure or campus used by, and again, to Commissioner Weiss's point, could it be a place of communal gathering that's with a tax exempt status, right? And then you can just call that a structure or campus used by any group or organization that has a tax exempt status and keep it more broad than even just related to a religion. Then you'd capture the teen challenge.
I like that.
I like that too.
Mhm.
How does everybody else feel? Yeah, that's a good,
Okay.
yeah. Yes, please.
Okay.
Not yeah.
Okay. I think we're okay. So at the council meeting last week, which I was not at, but I did hear about it, the facilities director for Cracksburger came and spoke to the council. And he asked if he could replace the existing sign at Cracksburger with an electronic message center sign. The reason he spoke to council is because he'd already called me and I said, no, the code is really clear that you can't do that. And he said, well, what do I do to change the code? And we talked about the process. So he came to city council and council directed staff to look into this topic about allowing some small niche amount of electronic reader board signs for schools like this. So right now we say, I think I was trying to keep it really limited to how we could do this without opening it widely. So thinking about limiting it to public schools is one way. So then you have the high school, which maybe could benefit from a reader board and would only impact the field, right? So across the street. Kraxberger, and then Wetton. So Wetton might be the one that's closest to residential uses and might be the one that would be the most maybe sensitive about whether we have an electronic message sign there or not. So then I looked at the distance of the Kraxberger sign to the nearest residential structure, like across the street. It's 80 feet away because Webster, I believe is the road it's on, is
Yes.
60-foot right of way. 50 feet is kind of the minimum right of way width in Gladstone. So you might see locations where it's a 50-foot right of way and a 20-foot setback, and that would give you 70 feet. But if maybe the residences are built closer, then you'd have to move your sign back to accommodate that spacing. And then the other thing, which is on the next slide, is to talk about how bright the sign is and what you do with the sign. So let me just go through the next 2 slides and then we can talk about this whole topic. So right now in the code, you can have one sign up to 32 square feet in size and 5 feet in height if you're commercial or institutional in an R zone, a residential zone. In addition to that, a church or school, and again, here we use that term church, so we'd want to replace that, may have one freestanding or on building changeable copy sign up to 32 square feet. And right now it says that may be internally or indirectly illuminated, but cannot be an electronic message center sign. So that's the code that I spoke to the facilities director about. Like, it's really clear that what you want to do is not permitted right now. So do we want to change that? And if we change that with, okay, yeah, you can do it, but you have to be limited in where you put it in relation to other residences. But also, like, do we want to talk about the definition? So right now, an electronic message sign in Gladstone is informational content can be changed or altered by electronic means, and the message is typically delivered through the use of LED lights. That's all we have for how we catalog an electronic message sign. So I looked at some other cities, and the 2 I liked best were Sherwood and Hillsborough, about how specific they were. In Sherwood, you could not have an incandescent lamp exceeding 25 watts, so nothing on the front of the sign that exceeds that. And your illumination has to be turned off and back on a maximum of every 30 seconds. But then I spoke to city staff, and the idea of having it darken at night came up, and that was offered by the Kraxberger facilities lead to that. He said it would be no big deal to make it dimmer at night. We'd just buy something that's automatic to do that. So that got me looking at other codes. And then it got me thinking about the timing of the message changing, that if you're driving by or even walking by, like 30 seconds is a pretty long time to have it solid. So I started looking at other codes, and they range from like 5 to 30s at the high end for sure. 5 to 15 seconds is like the interval most of them are in. Hillsborough uses an 8-second interval, and your change has to happen within 4 seconds. So it can roll in, but it has to like roll in 4 seconds, then hold steady for 8 seconds, and then it can change again. Their signs can't flash, undulate, pulse, portray explosions, fireworks, flashes of light, blinking or chasing lights, move toward or away from the viewer, no 3D experience here, can't expand, contract, bounce, rotate, spin, twist, or otherwise portray graphics or animation. So Hillsborough is really clear about what you can't do on your sign, which I think I've heard this group talk about after Gladstone's had their sign put up, and how surprising it was, some of the things that were happening with that sign. And then the final bullet point is that it would change from a maximum of 8,000 nits or candelas, which that's hard to measure from a staff perspective, but we have had some lights on like a commercial property that were too bright for a residence. And we had the applicant actually responsible for measuring how much their light was trespassing. And there are companies that do that. So they, if we had a problem, we would be able to have that information. But this one would reduce down to 1,000 between dusk and dawn. So I liked the Hillsborough definition best. And my question would be, what do you want to do this? Should we have a distance? Should we have a better definition? And should the definition only apply to electronic message signs in R zones, or should we put it for all electronic message signs, knowing that Gladstone's is pre-existing, it's subject to only what the Gladstone code is right now, And unless and until they change it out or do something different, they get to keep doing that. Discussion.
My first thought, I'm not super opposed, but if this is something that the rest of the commission feels like we want to pursue, I think it could be good to have even just a small work session with our traffic safety board as well, since this directly impacts,
Traffic.
and safety whilst driving. So as far as like how many seconds or the frequency, the candles, like that kind of stuff, the daylight, nighttime, things like that, they might have a little bit more direct input to the safety than we would know.
I agree with everything you just said. I would also like to see this for the commercial zones as well, since we'd already discussed potentially seeing the same kind of sign that we saw at Gladstone's everywhere. I would also recommend that we just think through whether we're thinking about those video. I don't know if that's what Cracksburger wanted to have, that high density
No,
video type screen.
Nope.
or
just
or-
like basically a marquee board that they
Marquee
can
board.
put a message out, but that they don't have, there's not even a pathway to it. So in the winter, you're like slogging across to even get out there to change the sign. So he said, if this isn't successful, I'll put in a pathway or do something different for the switch out, but they have to switch out that sign. It's failing or something. And he was like, what would be so incredible is if I could be in the office, program it to, and I don't think he'd even object to it being a static image, for the 30s, or, he just, because right now it's static. And so his issue is more about putting the message out there than how the message displays. That's not, and I think that's where if you link it to a public school, you're going to get public stewards who are, doing this message.
I don't have any objection.
The only thing we have, what we have in the code book right now, I think is really good. How often have we received requests for these type of signs?
Only Gladstones in the time I've been here.
Yeah,
But we do allow them already.
right.
So you could come in and apply for one. It's just right now you'd apply under, you can change it all electronically and it's LED lights. That's all that our code says about it. And size, we limit the size of it and things and the height. We would
Yeah.
continue.
So our code that we, as written right now, is pretty tight.
Well, it
Well-
doesn't limit how your message displays.
Okay.
The
and that we need
brightness,
to
the
address, yeah.
frequency, the flashing, and when it first came on, we were able to talk with the owner of Gladstone's and say it's too much. And they responded and said, we will figure out how to, they actually were just learning how to program the sign. I think it started with its factory settings and they were like, yeah, you're right. We'll fix it.
Yeah, I'm
But-
definitely for that.
But
I think we need to be very clear and concise about what's okay and what's not.
Mhm.
And I think the code has written the LED lights in that capacity was meant to refer to LED lights of a marquee board, not necessarily video board. So I
Correct.
Oh, yeah.
Gladstone's met because there probably are LED lights. They're just much smaller LED lights than
Yeah,
what was expected when this was written.
right.
Commissioner Graf?
I'm hugely not a fan of them, but I am torn because I also like the ability for them to be able to program it from their computer and not have to
Mhm.
like do it analog, which
Yeah.
is the way we're going with everything these days. So I would be in support of it. And I like Hillsborough's like no flashing or all.
Mhm.
It's funny. I wonder how they came up with like all those different exact things.
It's very detailed.
It's very
Mhm.
detailed, but
Yeah,
I
must
like
have
that
Had a big
actually.
discussion.
Hillsborough has a
Yeah.
really great lighting code and I think their sign code is pretty good too. They definitely have had some good revisions to it over time.
Yeah, so I would like to have a little more of that structure, but
Mhm.
yeah.
I just don't know if there's a way to differentiate the marquee board versus video board on
Well, I think that's
LED
if you if you cut out flashing, undulating, pulsing, contracting, bouncing, like I think that's what it's getting at is like really you can write words to make a mess, maybe a emoji here and there if it doesn't bounce around. And I think that's what that's trying to get at.
Oh, I think a fellow commissioner brought this to our attention a while ago and it kind of got put on the back burner.
Mhm.
I think this is a good opportunity to start talking about it again. And I do like the way Hillsborough's code is set up. It's very, very interesting.
And I think there's a traffic safety board meeting next Monday. I'm looking to City Recorder Bannock or City Administrator Betts. No, there's not going to be one. Okay. Not until June then that they wouldn't meet again. Okay. So we wouldn't have an opportunity to bring this before them until probably June. What we could do is we could definitely get the chief's opinion on it. I think on May 1st is that gives us enough time for our planning commission packet. So we could do that.
Everyone is in agreement of
Yeah.
that? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, please. Proceed.
Okay. I think that's everything. I think we made it through. Okay. So follow-ups are looking into the transportation SDC credit for the transportation impact analysis. Is there a way to balance those two things? Look at the definition of religious institution to broaden it to community-based gathering organizations with tax exempt status. And then get Chief Schmerber's review of the sign frequency of changing and see if there's a traffic safety perspective to look through that lens.
And I'm wondering if you're gonna meet with Chief Schmerber or code enforcement. Yvonne should probably be in on that
Sure.
as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on code updates? Mostly residential and legislative with a few extra things tucked in.
Do we have to stay on this timeline? We need to we
We-
need to put most of this through on May
If we
19th.
don't stay on this timeline, then what we are doing is just putting state law directly for those provisions. So there's no, we don't have to. I will say though, we are, we've agreed based on our council goals to take up food cart pods this year too. That's our last piece of code update that we agreed to with our work program. And so I'd really like to maybe take off a little time in summer and then have the fall to do food cart pods. So that's why I think it would be nice to stay on this schedule.
Is everyone,
And we do have this on the council agenda for June 9th. They plan out 3 business meetings in advance. So it would be nice to stay on the schedule from that perspective as well. If something just doesn't sit right and we need to pull a piece of text or a section or something and work it through a little better, we can definitely do that. But I think we're getting to a point where we're ready to move the majority of the package forward.
okay. Thank you.
thank you.
Very, very much.
Yeah, thank you.
I did have one quick question.
Yes.
I know that engineering delivery timelines are short up.
Yes.
Is there anything from an administrative perspective that is needed to be able to track those timelines better? It sounds like we already have a good program in place, so we're not worried about being in jeopardy.
Yeah, I've spoken to our consulting city engineer about it. I spoke to our former public works director about it, and it's definitely worth having a conversation with our current interim public works director just to make sure he's aware as well. But knowing that we have the continuity with Pat Sissel, our consulting engineer who does those reviews for the city, I feel confident that we've got that in place.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments, input? No? Okay.
I had a thought. Just, I know that there's always more House bills and Senate bills coming through and there's always something in the works. I wonder, would there be a way if there's like a couple that are in the progress or hitting the floor or something that would potentially impact us, if we could maybe bring them in as a discussion topic, just so that, we're all aware and have the opportunity to either go to our legislature and feel like, we have an opportunity to say something to the people who are making those decisions before they come down the line to us.
Yeah, we can definitely try. And we're in a long lull before the next session. So that
Yep.
gives us some time to plan and
Yep.
kind of be ahead of that.
For
So
sure.
I'll put that on my to-do list.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is this also something regarding our representatives, like, Mark Meek and whatnot, that we should have open conversations with about?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're going to fireside chats with them and things or whatever they're hosting, if they're at community events throughout the summer and things, it's definitely a good opportunity to chat with them.
Okay, great. Do we have any business from the public?
I have not received any requests.
Okay, there's no business from the, do you have anything you'd like to share with us? I know, I just get a high off of, you guys are all so good, and each and every one of you brings so much to the table. It is such an honor to serve with you guys. It really is. Thank you for that, because I totally second that. So it's fun. Gives me a thrill. Okay, let's start with you, Jennifer. Do you have any business?
No new business.
Okay, Commissioner Weiss?
No new business. Thank you.
No new.
Okay, Commissioner Brennan?
Nothing from me other than, thank you for the lively discussion tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay, Commissioner Gra?
Nothing for me.
I'll just reiterate, everyone comes prepared. I just really appreciate everyone's perspective on everything. We all are on the same page when it comes to wanting the absolute best for our city and for the citizens that inhabit it. And it's really exciting to do this work for me. I love all the input. We may not always agree, but we have respect for each other and we work through everything highly effectively. And I'm very proud of the work we do. So, and it is a total honor to serve with all of you. So on that note, our next meeting will be May 19th. And I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, Commissioner Reese made a motion to adjourn the meeting. It was seconded by Commissioner Brennan. Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Golbada,
Yes.
Commissioner Weiss.
Yes.
Commissioner Busick,
Yes.
Commissioner Gra,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Chair Smith.
Yes, meeting is adjourned at 7:55.